Benjamin Castle are Americans. Watching the footy.
Liam Ryan saying, kick it my way, I want to jump over the pack, and here he comes! Ryan!
This is Buddy Franklin! This is the greatest showman!
Got the handball off to Myers. Myers looking for the lead of Stengel. Gee, they're good. Gee, they're sharp. Razzle dazzle Rioli.
Oh, who else? McDonald!
From inside the centre square. Boys kick the goal. Boys kick the goal. From inside the centre. Foul. Oh, they can't believe that.
Good time of day, everyone. Welcome to episode 174 of Americans Watching the Footy. I am Benjamin Castle here with my brother Ethan and his cat, Brian Arambe, in South San Francisco, California for one of the final times for a while, as shortly after this episode is up, I will be driving down to San Diego to my new place there. I'm about to be starting graduate school. Fucking nerd. Hey, I think there's a thing with American footy fans being teachers. This would make 3 of us within our fantasy circle out of a 12-person league. Ooh, I never thought of that. Maybe we just need like a teaching footy podcast with me, Craig, and Gil. That would actually be interesting. Off-season ideas for sure. Or even make it like a weekly show. I don't know. Another show in addition to this one? Yes. You totally have time for that. But yes, this is the penultimate episode we are recording together because they won't know that we're recording episode 175 before this one. They definitely won't know unless we have an embarrassing hot mic moment. Oh, speaking of embarrassing hot mic moments, which we would never have, just like, we'd never have 9 misfortunes.
But 9 misfortunes? I'd like to see that.
There's a video of a broadcaster on a high school soccer game having a hot mic moment during halftime. Is this new? Yeah, Awful Announcing posted it. Basically, the guy was, he thought his mic was off. He even acknowledged making sure it was off, which it wasn't. And then went into how, the game had sucked, and then, the hot moms are the only reason to pay attention. He is no longer a broadcaster there. No, he is not. But it was a funny one. What's the name of that fake broadcaster who did the video profanely calling Ross Bowers' flip into the end zone all those years ago? Ooh, I don't know. If I just look up vulgar sports announcer. Actually, the first thing that comes up is this hot mic thing, but cut back on the shelf. I forget the dude's name, but the point is I learned about it from a Cal moment that I saw in person. That was a very smoky game. That was the night Mike Leach, rest in peace, called his team a bunch of front runners. Pathetic front runners, specifically. We haven't done this for a while, but we gotta start this episode with some
news, everyone!
There is a rule crackdown occurring mid-season, and people are pissed. Well, I think people will be happy that this crackdown is happening, actually. I just hope they don't overcorrect, which is always a concern, which will likely happen at first. Oh yeah, definitely gonna happen. I think the biggest issue is that it's happening mid-season. I think that's what people are most upset about. I had called this out as an issue weeks ago. With people tackling more gently now, not bringing tackles to ground as much, the definition of reasonable time has changed, and they're actually starting to get that right now with holding the ball, ? Guys not getting hurt is good. Consistency in umpiring would be good, and this should help us be able to have both those things, hopefully. Because there's been so much confusion, and I'm a fan of a team that's been on the wrong side of that a billion times, where it's we've got a dude for 5 seconds and it's not holding the ball. Hopefully this gets it right. I assume there's going to need to be a counter adjustment after this adjustment, but I'm glad the league is addressing it and stepping up in the moment. Reminds me of how the NFL sometimes issues clarifications mid-season. This was definitely needed, because there was no standard. Now there's somewhat of one. I think from here we can get to a point where at least we'll be able to know, they're not going to get it right every time.
Thanks, Basil.
But we'll be able to know more or less when correct calls were made. We'll have a benchmark. We'll have an idea of what holding the ball should be. And players will have a better idea of how they can tackle without risking injury. Because there's got to be, there's a balance in there between safety and playing the game properly. Insert Tom Atkins spinning around Dustin Martin for 540 degrees and Dusty being allowed to play on this week. Because if anyone would be allowed more time, it would probably be him. I was thinking Carlton. Just any Carlton player.
Well, Charlie Curnow was allowed a bunch of time against Mac Andrew. I think that was one of the most egregious calls yet.
That's actually like the photo that's on the article.
Excellent. Good.
So there's some self-awareness here. And I like when leagues can admit their failures. And the AFL is doing that here. So this is good. I'll probably complain about an overcorrection at some point, but for now, good.
Speaking of the Blues, they won their first game at the Adelaide Oval this season, and now they've got a chance to actually beat a South Australian team there on Thursday night.
Before we start with that, I actually am going to jump in. I'm super excited for this round. This is an awesome set of games. I see a couple that could be shit, but I see a lot that should be really good. And I will admit, some of that probably has to do with the obvious best team and the obvious worst team both having buys. More so the obvious worst team. I think there's a lot of unpredictability. I think we're going to have a lot of close games. And you know what? I'm going to go out and call it. We're going to have an after the siren winner this round. I don't know which game. I think we're going to have an after the siren winner. What if this would totally be my luck? The year I don't get to watch Alice Springs live. It ends on an after the siren winner.
Or what if Dead Houston just does it 2 years in a row, going back to...
You're jumping the gun again. I also just want to formally welcome everyone to what is also one of my favorite weeks of the season, just because of one game. It is Alice Springs week.
Alice Springs is game 6 of 7 in the round. Game 1 of 7 is Port and Carlton, 7 p.m. local, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Americans can watch this game on Fox Sports 2 at 5:30 a.m. Eastern, 2:30 Pacific on Thursday. These teams are separated by a single game.
And double check on TV stuff.
And 5 positions on the ladder, 3rd versus 8th, both coming off wins this past week. Last year's meeting was a turning of the tide for both teams, if you may recall, Ethan.
Looking at it now. Carlton's 50-point win at Marvel in round 18. It was a pretty short-handed Port Adelaide team. And we didn't expect that it would turn them from 13 straight wins to 4 straight losses. We thought, all right, they were down a few guys this week. They'll be all right. Took them a minute to be all right again, and then they weren't all right in finals.
Meanwhile, for the Blues, it was their 4th straight win. All of them, I think, were by 50 or more. And before their prelim loss, they had won 11 of the previous 12. Carlton won that game with a bunch of high pressure. The smaller players really lifted there. Jesse Motlop was an outstanding late in and continued to step up, even with Mackay going out. I think he hurt his meniscus in that game. Speaking of Motlop, he is a test for this week. I know he is probably your favorite on the Blues.
Yeah, I mean, they have a lot of individual players that I like.
It's the fact that they're Carlton.
Yeah, but I think he's one in terms of how I rate him versus how everyone else does. He probably grades out pretty high for me. I mean, I'd put Jacob Wiedering way up there too, but I think everyone's kind of in agreement on Wiedering.
Motlop played on managed minutes in his return to the VFL, kicked a goal from 5 touches. We've seen a couple players this year make very, very quick returns after managed time in the VFL. I'm thinking in particular of Chadwick Jaff. So maybe Motlop does get in quickly.
We will come back to that and the other team decisions later, because we're going to reconvene for Mad Libs at the very end of this episode because, A, it's a shorter episode, and because of changes to our recording schedule, it's probably going to be the last Mad Libs, at least for now. Almost certainly the last Mad Libs of the 2024 home and away season. That seems like a pretty confident prediction.
No, I might actually be back for rounds 22 through 24 times.
Yeah, but even that, though, with, not having Thursday games.
Oh, right, there's that.
Yeah.
The thing is, there are always Mad Libs here. This is the Bay Area.
Caleb Marchbank was managed last week against the Suns. He should be available. In terms of outs, we know that there will once again be no Adam Chera,
not Wolf,
no David Cunningham, no Jack Martin, and Mark Pitnett could be back next week against the Bombers for the Circle of Cups game, but not this week. We know that.
Marchbank, I don't see coming back in just because the defense looks steady enough. And if you do need to move somebody back within the game, you've got Zach Williams for that.
Yeah, I guess forward Zach Williams is now a thing.
At least as a stopgap with Martin and Motlop still out, maybe. I mean, a career-high 4 goals last week. I couldn't see him being moved back after that sort of performance.
I mean, it's happened before to Callum Brown.
Yes, but this is Michael Voss, not Leon Cameron.
Now I'm thinking about Leon Cameron, and it's was he a good coach? Was he a bad coach? I think he was just kind of a coach, yeah. And maybe I'm being swayed by what's happening right now, but I have come to the belief that the Giants do an amazing job evaluating talent and do an incredible job drafting. And so I don't know how much, the problem, they obviously have had issues retaining guys, but has coaching helped or hurt? Now I'm thinking about that when I should be thinking about what should be dare I say, a cracking game. I mean, look, can we just call this cracking round? Cracking round.
I don't think it'll be as cracking, though, without Willie Rioli, because he's going to be out 2 to 3 weeks, having injured his cap and being subbed out last week. There are a whole bunch of directions in which the poor forward line could go. Charlie Dixon was managed last week. He should return, but with Connor Rosie also doubtful, there could be 2 changes here. So do you bring in a tall with Dixon? Do you just stack up on talls with Mitch Georgiadis or Jeremy Finlayson? Or do you go smaller and do the automatic win with Frank Evans? Well, not automatic, but 80% or so. I also want to mention, because he was in the mix article and because his name is awesome, pick number 48, Tom Anastasopoulos. BT would love that.
I just got an alert from the AFL, and it is not to do with this. It's to do with Alastair Clarkson being investigated after allegedly using profane language towards the umpire's bench during Saturday's loss to Port.
All right, another fine.
Or this could activate that suspension from going after Jimmy Webster and Dougal Howard. I can't remember now. I gotta find the details.
While you're looking that up, just what direction do you see the power forward line going here? Taller or smaller against the Blues? I think I'd lean taller.
Yeah, I think so. I think because you want to match up against guys like Wiedering and McGovern as best you can.
And honestly, Brody Kemp, he's been playing much better these past few weeks as well. It seems like he's validating my sleeper pick there. Also, Avon Soldo might be returning because he rehabbed in the sample this past week from his knee injury. You'd rather probably have him in than Jordan Sweet. Sweet hasn't done anything wrong, but Soldo's the superior player.
Aha, I think I found the quote in question I was thinking of. About a decade ago, a backup USC running back quit the team, accusing then head coach Steve Sarkisian of racism, and in his quotes he said that Sarkisian called him all types of fuck words. So maybe Alastair Clarkson called the umps all types of fuck words? Just a great quote that can be used in so many contexts. Okay, not that many contexts, but should be used whenever possible, and this is definitely an opportunity where you can. All types of fuck words.
The Power are currently 6.5-point favorites. How much would you drop that if Rosie is out?
I don't know if I'd change it much, as weird as that sounds. I like how the horny one is played.
Here he is again, the horny one.
Zach Butters was just kind of okay last week. Ollie Wines could step up. Oh, speaking of, there are rumors that North really wants him, and because, we recorded our progress reports already, we don't even mention him talking about North. We actually talked about, the guys who currently play for North instead of guys getting recruited there.
Good. Good on past us or future us. When are we? And also, when are we?
Yeah, I guess maybe you could drop this line to 2.5. I'm tipping Port to win by 5. And Ken Hinckley's going to have a very X-rated celebration on the sidelines.
I'll say Blues by 8.
I don't think there are too many people that see this as not a close game.
Which, of course, means it'll be blown out. This is a double up.
Blues getting blown out for the second time in 3 weeks would definitely rustle my jimmies.
I think you'd end up looking like Ken Hinckley then.
No, but I'd be happy.
This is a double up with the teams scheduled to meet again round 20 at Marvel Stadium.
This round has a lot of double ups, huh? 5 out of 7, that's a lot. Especially to be this late in the season and have teams that haven't even played a first time.
That is a lot. Speaking of Marvel, that's where we'll be Friday night.
I'm very confused by this. Is Collingwood obligated to play a certain number of games at Marvel each year? I don't think it's, to get the G turned around quickly for the first game Saturday, because they've had no issue with that before. But I would be very, very confident that the game at Marvel is going to have a bigger crowd than the game the following day at the G. And it's going to be really silly that this is at Marvel, because I think they'd easily be able to get over 50,000 for it if they put it at the G. considering the crowds Collingwood is drawn against out-of-state opponents. I think this just seems dumb. Seems like the AFL saying, no, you've got to play at the stadium we own. Why not do that against one of the other teams from elsewhere? You know, that they did it against the Eagles on Mother's Day. That made sense.
Didn't make sense against the Lions last year either.
The Lions, kind of made sense. Trying to think of who else they could do a home game there against. The Crows would have made some sense. They still ended up drawing over, 60-something for that?
Yeah, that was a home and away record between the two.
Yeah, I guess, looking at the remaining home games, other than the Lions, there's really no other that would have made sense at all. I think the Crows are the only other one that would have made sense.
And because they go to the Gold Coast?
Yes.
Well, they also may be going there an extra time a season or two from now.
If I was a Suns fan, you have no idea how mad I would be about someone else playing home games in my stadium, even though I would still totally go because yay footy.
But Collingwood and the Bulldogs at Marvel, typical Friday night time, 7:40. Another Fox Sports 2 game, it looks like. 5:40 a.m. Eastern, 2:40 Pacific. This will be the first game I fully enjoy from my new place in San Diego. The home team in this head-to-head has lost 5 straight meetings. That includes last year when it was properly a Marvel game, and the Pies scored a 2-goal victory, 89-77. Nick Dacos dominated and won the Bob Rose Charlie Sutton medal with 15 contested possessions and 11 clearances. He and Jordan DeGoey were a ridiculous on-ball tandem, and the Pies just cashed in on their more dominant stretches of play.
I think that medal will be up for grabs in this game. I think it's
every meeting between them.
Yeah, I think so.
So prepare yourselves for another great Darcy Moore speech. Wait a minute, the Bulldogs are favored by 1.5.
Yeah, Collingwood's got a lot of outs. Also, this game hasn't been a double up unless they just don't contest the cup every time. And this is where Final Siren comes in. They played twice in 2016, but it seems like they didn't give out the cup and medal for the second meeting. I'm surprised it's been that long since these teams have doubled up. I mean, I know with Collingwood it's tough because you're usually going to see double ups with Carlton and Essendon. Still, that they haven't doubled up since then that just seems kind of surprising. Oh, here's a fun one. Who earned the medal in 2022?
Is it someone who no longer plays for the team in question?
No.
Was it Adam Treloar?
Yes, in his, I believe, second meeting.
Yeah, second meeting with Collingwood. I think it was round 1, 2021 that he had his first encounter with him.
Yes, and that was a big deal. That was like one of the most hyped up things of a pretty hyped up round 1. But yeah, the big storyline for this game, I think what makes it so unpredictable and a really tough game to even set a point spread for are the number of injuries that both teams are going to be dealing with.
The Pies copped 4 more injuries this past week. Mason Cox got concussed and hurt his MCL. That's a 6-week out in all likelihood for him. Rody Majacek did his hamstring again. That's another 2 to 4. Joe Richards injured his foot. That's 5 to 6 for someone who'd been starting off super well in his first 3 games at the top level. And Scott Pendlebury's out this week with an arm injury as well. So now if he returns next week for King's birthday, and I imagine they do everything they could to get him up for that rivalry, then he would be on track to play a road game technically at the G against Hawthorn for his 400.
Really, I liked all 3 of Richards, Lockie Sullivan, and Harvey Harrison. And I think out of those, Richards might be my favorite so far. I think.
Harrison got the Rising Star nod for this past round. Richards, I don't think can because he's already too old. Because he's 22, I believe. Or maybe older still. Wait, he's 24? Damn it, I know Lockie Sullivan's like 26.
Hey, you know what's funnier than 24?
25.
So, possible ins for Collingwood. Well, first, Jack Bytel and Reef McInnes would make sense, but they got to get through concussion protocols.
McInnes as a roving tall, especially without Majacek and only 1 ruck, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Ash Johnson, Nathan Kruger, and Finn McRae were all emergencies this past round. I would love to see Johnson in particular back in after all the crap he caught at the start of the year. And I mean, yeah, he played really poorly. It would be cool for him to show, like, yeah, I'm actually pretty good. I'm still him.
I'd be scared to see Nathan Kruger just because he'd probably dislocate his shoulder again.
I feel like he hasn't moved up to the level of just weird injuries. All his injuries, I mean, he's been hurt a lot, but they've been normal. Like, there's two types of oft-injured guys. There's the ones who just get normal injuries, and then there's the ones who get, like, weird stuff, like, you know, a dislocated spleen, or what? Yeah, I don't know if you can even dislocate your spleen. A herniated... Now I gotta think of something funny. Herniated radula? That's a thing in mollusks. It's sort of like a tongued tooth thing in mollusks. Who's the king of weird? I think Mason's the king of weird injuries, actually. I think he'd be most likely to injure a body part that's not even found in mammals. That's an award we should present him. You know, it's like there's, you know, the yearbook awards and stuff.
Most likely to injure a body part not found in mammals.
Yes.
I feel like we need to give an award to Brody Grundy as well for just like weird accidents.
Most likely to play through an injury that never happens to humans.
That's Brody. Maybe it's just a Collingwood Ruck thing that...
Other possibilities, Harry DiMattia, who I want to say was my sleeper pick because he just looks like a Collingwood player.
He fought through injuries at the start of the year. I think a couple lower body injuries for him. And then check with Jat's brother Tao is knocking on the door as well. Pick 37 this past year.
I thought if it was like 2 or 2, it's Tao. Okay. I feel like I should have known that because I've been keeping an eye on him because I'm just a fan of watching CJ, and I'll probably be a fan of watching his brother too.
I'm looking forward to seeing these like South Sudanese guys continue to emerge.
Need a few at Geelong. We have like none.
Right, but like TJ, Lamont Luwal for Essendon, especially after we learned about him with the smoky 2-part thing that they did last year on the website.
Sabit Kuek's another, Dominic Akwe. The Bulldogs are going to be down Aaron Naughton, MCL injury, and then Anthony Scott, who got concussed like 2 minutes into his first game of the year, and Ed Richards. So both teams are down on Richards, who had been playing really well. Ed Richards, I think, was best on ground in their prior 2 games and in the first half of the game against the Swans before he got hurt. And then he gets concussed. So, well, first off, probably Rory Lobb for Aaron Naughton.
Lobb wants out.
I mean, I don't blame him. He's an AFL caliber player who doesn't really have a spot in a crowded group of talls. Riley Sanders needs to stay in. I feel strongly about that.
Was a late in with Jimmy O'Donnell getting sick, and then was a very quick into the actual game because of Scott's concussion. I think with Richards and Scott both out, his value goes up exponentially. And with Liva still out at least for another week, this is obviously the right time to actually put some gains into him.
I think Oscar Baker is, you know, I think he's a great sub candidate because of the speed he offers. I think he's also just an easy guy to bring in because I don't think you worry too much about dragging him around, in and out. I think you just kind of plug and play him as needed.
With young guys like Sanders, though, you need patches of a few games at a time. You don't just yo-yo them.
When you mentioned Jimmy O'Donnell a minute ago, you know what I was thinking, right? No. I was thinking,
Mr. Beast!
Oh, Jimmy Donaldson.
Mostly just the sound. It's just a really great sound, and I'm going to spam it anytime I can.
Mr. Beast!
Should James O'Donnell's nickname then be Beast?
Maybe. Let's see. Now I was going to think of like a Mr. Beast type video title, but it didn't come to me. First person to get 20 disposals wins $100,000. Does that work?
Hit both goalposts, win a car. We've seen a couple double doinks in our time watching the footy.
More common in another type of football, but yes.
To all the Chicago Bears fans listening to us, Hawthorne and Adelaide at the G. I get why you're not putting this game at Marvel, considering the Hawks played there this past week, but yeah, this one would probably fit for that. This is the start of your 3-game Saturday slate because, again, no overlaps. This is the most intrigued I've been in terms of like full season prospects for a 14th versus 12th game in a while.
I'm pretty juiced for this one. This is going to be cracking.
And we've had some fun in recent Hawthorne home games head-to-head as well. Last year in round 6, it was a 3-point Crows win. Super high-pressure game with Rory Laird and Jake Saligo leading the way for the Crows. Taylor Walker kicked 4 goals in a somewhat inaccurate day all around. And Darcy Fogarty kicked a really harsh angle winner with a minute 16 left. 68 degrees from 34 meters out.
I feel like this is a matchup that's usually in Tasmania.
Well, 2023 was. 2021 was. That was Riley Philthorpe's debut. He kicked 5. The Crows started 15 straight and
Barely won.
false. Lost by 3. 102 to 99.
Aha, you're right. Okay.
15-12 to 16-3. I remember this very vividly.
All right, so here's what's been weird about this matchup. This will be the 5th Hawthorn home game in a row, but the first of those at the G. There were 2 at Marvel, 2 at Tasmania. They'll be playing at the Adelaide Oval in round 20. This is a double up. It'll be their first meeting there since 2020. Was it a game that's been played in like blocks at one oval instead of the other a bunch of times? Like,
I think 2020 was actually supposed to be a Hawthorn home game.
yes, it looks like 2019 actually was a Crows home game. And then 2021, the latter meeting was a Crows home game that ended up at Marvel because, you know, someone in South Australia touched that football.
Right. Do not touch that ball. That health minister was more out of touch than Sarah Cody.
There's a lot of out of touch health people in case this is like just the first you've noticed. 8:45 p.m. our time, the time that matters. The time is now 11:45 p.m. on the East Coast, 1:45 p.m. at the G, and 1:15 back in South Australia. This is a Fox Soccer Plus game. Every game the rest of the round appears to be, and I'm not sure why that is. During the break, I'm going to look at FS2 and FS1 scheduling and be very critical of whatever the hell they have on there instead.
Probably rugby or NASCAR replays. That happens a lot. I was really looking forward to the Lloyd Meek versus Riley O'Brien matchup, and it looks like Lloyd Meek probably won't be playing. He hurt his ankle last round, managed to play through it, but doesn't look like he'll go this week. So game on then, in all likelihood, Ned Reeves, who rehabbed from his broken hand in the twos.
Hitouts will not be close. I do think Reeves could pose a problem for Riley O'Brien with his mobility and, you know, ability as a forward mark. But I guess, you know, if Jack Gunston's in there, I don't think that's entirely necessary.
This will be Gunston's 250th game, and it will come against his first team. Interesting to play the game before a milestone and the milestone itself against your 2 forward clubs.
He'll get shared off, yeah.
I imagine so.
He means a lot to that club. Also, looks like Nick Watson's available. Chad Wingard has now played 4 VFL games. Who would you plug him in for?
That's the difficulty with how well the forward line went last week. You're not going to pull out Jack Ginnivan after he said how much easier it is to be a forward at Hawthorn than Collingwood.
I mean, I think some of that is not just the attention on you, but like the style of play from each team. Like, I get it. You can't criticize their precious club.
I think this is another case, though, like you can see with some other clubs, maybe like the Swans, where you don't want to disturb a good thing when you've won 3 out of 4, and the one loss wasn't because of anything you did offensively.
I mean, I'm just looking at numbers from last week. Cal Sherdier got subbed out, but I mean, you could go smaller by taking him out. Seamus Mitchell, was he injured or just barely noticeable?
I think he just didn't do much, but he's more of a
Less than 2/3 of the time on ground and 4 disposals.
He's more of a back, though.
I know, but I'm just trying to figure out ways you could... I mean, maybe if you then just move Blake Hardwick back and get Wingard in, I think that's the way it could happen, is you take out Mitchell, move Hardwick back, and get Wingard in.
Well, Hardwick did play back near the end of the 2nd through 4th quarters. So,
otherwise, I guess, like, Josh Weddle? I mean, he's not quite the right type either. I'm just spitballing here. I think the easiest way would be
the one you said.
Yeah, I think so.
The Crows have no new injuries, and I don't expect them to change much. Maybe you could get Sam Berry a full game and manage someone else in there. It was Harry Schellenberg's first game back in the AFL last week, and while he did good things, maybe you want to take it a little more slowly for him and slide him to the sub role.
I just came up with something Harry Schoenberg looks like. Definitely just like someone who was involved in the creation of a meme, like whether he was the victim of a joke or the one who came up with the joke.
He looks like the person who would be in like an old school image macro.
Oh, not even. Just like he was involved in something that became a meme.
Looks to be a bit too old for the TikTok Riz party.
Definitely too old for that.
The Crows are 1.5-point favorites. Honestly, I think I like this, especially with Meek likely out.
I think that should probably swing it a couple of points further, actually. I mean, I do think both these teams don't have good history in close games. I think I'd still take Hawthorn in a close game over Adelaide, just knowing how each club operates, even though I do think the Crows are the superior team by a slim margin. I also think, unlike Port and Carlton, where, kind of have the feeling like that's kind of destined to be a close game,
This could go any which way.
this could be a 40-point blowout in either direction or a down-to-the-wire game. So good luck trying to figure this one out. A lot of people tipped last round very well. I don't see a lot of people having that success this round.
I was 9 for 9, and I put Collingwood in as my tip for the draw.
I was 8 for 9, and with the draw, what was mine?
You missed Hawthorn, I know.
I thought Marvel would be enough for the Lions, and I thought they just needed it more. I also went Collingwood, but yeah, I could also see, like I've said, at some point, it's probably more likely on the road or something, or maybe against the Giants in Tasmania. At some point, the Hawks are going to have a game that's just like, we've done our work, we've won a few.
This doesn't seem like the game, though. Especially
But I feel like it's a little more likely than some of the others they have coming up.
for a milestone for Gunston. I think
That's true. That's the one factor that makes me think they're really going to be in this thing. Benjamin, 78% of our listeners are between 18 and 35 years old, so they probably want to start a podcast like we did.
How do you know that number, Ethan?
Thanks to the analytics we have for Spotify for Podcasters.
Formerly known as Anchor, sorry Frio fans, Spotify for Podcasters has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast from your phone or your computer. No fancy software needed.
It's so easy you can edit it while drunk.
And Spotify for Podcasters doesn't just allow you to upload to Spotify, you can also distribute your podcast on platforms like Apple, Stitcher, and more, just like we do.
Best of all, it's completely free.
Not only is it free, you can even make money from listener support or ad revenue. Hint, hint.
Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to podcasters.spotify.com to get started today. Welcome back to Americans Watching the Footy. As always, I'm Ethan Castle, unless I decide to go by something else. I'm on Twitter at Castle Media.
I am Benjamin Castle. I don't plan on going by something else anytime soon. Find me at BenjaminHK01 on Twitter.
Find Brian Harambe on Instagram at catnamebrian. Actually got a couple of good ones to upload. Gonna finally do that.
Let me guess, it's just him laying on his back.
No, actually, this is different.
Oh, wow.
During the break, I checked on what's going to be airing on US TV this weekend instead of Footy, and man, it's a pretty loaded lineup, including things like replays of a rodeo from 2.5 months ago and qualifying, not live, but from earlier in the day, for the Enjoy Illinois 300, which is a NASCAR race. It's in southern Illinois, like close to St. Louis. I gotta say, there are a lot of tough places to be a tourism board for. Being a tourism board for any part of Illinois outside of Chicago, that's a tough one.
Is this at Gateway?
Yes.
Yeah, I know IndyCar has a race there as well.
It's just, I guess the western part of the state that borders the Mississippi River, there's some cool, boat stuff. But there's a lot of Illinois that's just very, very flat, very empty, and very boring.
I just don't understand why Fox Sports 2 doesn't carry more live stuff and why Fox...
There's not even a bunch of NRL stuff this weekend.
That's what caught me the most off guard.
Yeah, I thought you're supposed to have, it's always the same crew for NRL, it seems like. It's always Dan Janane or Ganane. I think Janane. Cooper Cronk and Jake Duke. But I guess, looking at the NRL schedule, I think there are some buys there the next couple weeks, but it's not like the whole league takes off for Origin. It's just kind of a midweek thing.
Yeah, it's just midweek. That's an Origin tackle!
All right, before we preview the final 4 games, are we just going to do the final Mad Libs now?
Might as well, because we had some time for you to do that during the break. All right, so firstly, I need to fill in the Mad Libs.
Yeah, you'll fill them in, then you'll guess the changes, and then
we'll recite.
Yeah. There's one thing that I'm not going to change because it's just really funny.
Well, don't tell me.
All right, give me an adjective.
Textural.
Give me an occupation or role somebody can have.
Chicken sexer.
Good.
Learned about that one from Dirty Jobs. Mike Rowe is the man.
Another adjective.
Gangrenous.
Another adjective. Actually, no. This one I need a verb.
Wallop.
I need a body part. Note from our discussion earlier, does not have to be a human body part. Or was that something we talked about in our next episode that we already recorded? I don't remember. It's been a long night. But I need a body part. It can be a human body part.
I'm going to go smaller in this one. Golgi apparatus.
Good one. I need a location.
City,
Just a location.
Kyrgyzstan.
I need a shape.
2 or 3 dimensional.
Just a shape.
Let's go 3-dimensional dodecahedron. Thank you, Phantom Toll Booth.
Need an adjective?
Brittle.
I think I used that one already.
What? I don't think so.
Need a verb?
Perturb.
And I need an adjective.
This is it, huh?
Yep, last one.
Soporific.
Okay, actually I need a verb.
In addition,
Yeah.
plunge.
All right, now it's time to guess the changes.
Okay.
If I gave you the headline, it would give away a bunch.
Well, we know that Willie Rioli is out.
Yes.
I would assume that Jordan Sweet is also out
Why would you assume that?
because Avant Soldo is in his place.
Yes, and I just grabbed him in fantasy, so I have a ruckman for when Jared Witz goes on by.
I'll need to figure that out still for round 14 when Max Gawn is on bye, which might be the same week. Damn. Are they just going tall with Charlie Dixon back in?
He's back.
Good.
Okay, you're not. So how many changes is Port making?
Okay, so I already gave 2 each way. I think there's a third, and it's because Connor Rosie is actually out.
Yep. Any others?
Considering how convincing their win was and there was no other management, and I don't think this is a game where you would manage, I think we're good at 3 here.
Correct.
Okay, so out we've got Rioli, Rosie, and Sweet. In, we've got Dixon and Soldo. Is there a debut?
No.
Okay, so no Tom Anastasopoulos.
Nope.
BT will have fun with that one when he gets in. Is Dylan Williams back in? Hasn't been seen for a bit. Not listed on injury report, is it, Williams?
Nope.
Yeah, that wouldn't be too like for like there, considering this is more of an offensive switch. Lockie Jones, that is staying in because he was a sub this past week. I like that. 80% win?
Yep.
Yay, Frank the Tank. I like this a lot. This is just logical from the Power. And for the Blues, with the timelines that we know of, I think the only potential, I don't think they're switching up the defense. Caleb Marchbank, does Caleb Marchbank remain out?
Correct.
Maximum of 1 change then. And if so, I would say Motlop for Fantasia.
Nope.
Are they unchanged?
Yep.
Oh.
I'm a little surprised. On one hand, I think Fantasia's been marginal. On the other, I hope we get BT to say it.
So that's it then. 3 changes.
Yep. And I guess now, time for the Mad Lib.
Do it.
Port Adelaide will be without Chicken Sex or Connor Rosie for Thursday night's clash against Carlton, while the Blues are textural for the game at Adelaide Oval. The Power have made 3 changes from their win over North Melbourne, with Rosie ankle and expected out, and Willie Rioli injured, also out injured.
Whoop.
That's the one that I didn't even need to change. It's awesome already.
Willie Rioli is injured because he suffered an injured injury.
Key forward Charlie Dixon comes in, having been rested for the game against the Roos, while ruckman Ivan Soldo returns in place of Jordan Sweet. Francis Evans has also been recalled. The Blues are unchanged, meaning small gangrenous Jesse Motlock will wallop again, having been sidelined with Golgi apparatus and sleep apnea injuries so far this season.
Sleep apnea? That wasn't me.
That was one that I had been waiting to throw in, and since this is our last Mad Lib for a while, it's in there. Carlton has won just one of its 8 games at Kyrgyzstan dodecahedron, the nail-biting brittle victory over Fremantle earlier this year. The Power can perturb themselves in the top 4 with a win, while the Blues are aiming to plunge their top 8 places. So, 4 more games to preview, yeah?
Yup, and oh boy.
This one is definitely the most likely to be a shit game.
Sickos game of the round here.
But I think this could also be kind of compelling.
Well, they had compelling meetings in the past couple years.
I feel like this one is this could end up being like in a cosmic sort of way. But like this could actually, it would be too much to say it could be good, but it can be close. Here's what I'm going to say. If the Saints do not win this game, they are almost certainly fucked, even though I cannot predict much about them.
Are they not fucked already at 3-8?
No, because they defy logic. They're just kind of off there floating in their own silly world.
Eagles and Saints out in Perth, 2:35 p.m. local, 4:35 for the Australian Eastern States. For Americans, 2:35 Eastern, Saturday morning, 11:35 p.m. Pacific, Friday night on Fox Soccer Plus. These teams will be meeting out west for the 4th straight year, though they will have a rematch in round 19 under the roof. Last year in round 16, the Saints won by 8 points. It was an ugly fourth quarter. No goals, 3 for the Eagles, 1 goal, 6 for St. Kilda. West Coast also only had 25 AFL-listed players available.
That late in the season that happened to them in 2023.
Yeah, Harry Barnett was the one who actually got the nod as the sub. It was his debut, and the other 2 were playing in the Waffle. I think Tyrell Dewar might have been one of them.
Oh, I think I happily ignored a lot of this game because I was Alice springing from, I guess I would have just gotten into Minnesota then?
Minnesota!
So this game is once again the Alice Springs week.
The Saints adjusted well in that second half, just opening the game up on the outside. And that's the way to beat the Eagles. So expect a heavy weight gain out of Jackson Clare if things are to make sense here. But of course, these are the Saints, so things probably won't make sense. Seriously though, I've got so many questions for the Eagles on the outside. Maybe if Jai Cully comes back in, there's a place for him to kind of accelerate play from there, to try to ease him back in and avoiding some more contact. That's a way to do it. There needs to be some sort of wing solution. Throw somebody out there opposite Campbell Chesser on the other side. Get some of the young guys some running space. I think maybe see what he could do between Cully and Ruben Jinby if they both get in, kind of split their time there.
Could this game be a draw?
The Saints are a sickos enough team.
I feel like they are the perfect team to have a draw when there are too many draws. Because normally, like I said, the draw has been welcomed. This is a pro-draw podcast. But if we had 4 in less than half a season, and that would be excessive. Draws are kind of like alcohol. Great in moderation, but can be very, very debilitating if overused.
I thought it was because they were both free.
Ooh, that's true.
Other potential ins for the Eagles include Jack Petrocelli and Matt Flynn. If you're trying to see what Billy J. Williams could do as more of a forward, which seemed like the plan at the start of the season, then Flynn in the ruck and Williams forward would be the way to go. I'm not really sure about that, but maybe it would take some heat off Jake Waterman. I just want to see Cully back in the AFL and hopefully giving him enough of a reason to side on, and also giving Zane True another chance at the top flight. We still have not seen him since round 23 of last year when he was the super sub. That was a fun game, that win against the Bulldogs.
The Saints came through last week uninjured, but played really poorly. I do not think the score represents just how badly they got cleaned up.
3 late goals made it look a little respectable.
Honestly, this is one where if you just watch the game, if you watch the game and don't pay attention to the score, you would think it's way less close than it was. That felt like a 60 to 70 point game. And it felt like even at half when the D's were only up 12, it felt not very close. But Dan Butler returned just fine in the VFL, and Zach Jones responded to his demotion. Again, I've talked about this with Geelong. I'm not a fan of, pulling guys back and forth, unless it's someone who that's just kind of going to be their role, like an Oscar Baker. I don't think that's necessarily Zach Jones's role.
I think Jones is better than that.
Yeah.
But I'd also put Hunter Clark and Brad Crouch ahead of Jones to return.
Yeah, Jones just kind of seems to be in the doghouse. Tim Membry kicked 6-2 and had 10 marks. And then Ollie Houghton, who was a 2022 draft pick, he kicked 5 goals. So, this is a team that needs sparks up front. Haven't gotten what they've needed out of Matthias Filippo and Lance Collard. Whether that's on the players or the system or so many other things can definitely be discussed and argued extensively. And I think there are plenty of cases to be made that some of this is kind of just a product of Ross ball.
Also, Jack Higgins, I could totally see Houghton taking someone like Darcy Wilson's spot, even though Wilson remains a pretty functional player, just because Houghton is another pretty versatile mid-forward type. And Membry in for Caminiti seems like the right move, although I, again, don't want to yo-yo Caminiti around.
Looking at the numbers, just those individual stats, I'm a little surprised. I would have thought Sandringham would have played against, a pretty poor opponent. No, this was against Casey.
And what was the margin again?
They won by 13.
13! 13!
The Eagles are 2.5-point favorites. No.
Yeah, that seems fair. With how they've played at home and with how bad the Saints have been, that is a very reasonable assessment.
How quickly can they respond after the shit performance they had in Adelaide?
Wow, the Saints have a whole 80-minute advantage there. That's significant.
Some coaches would complain about that. Don't think Simpson's the type, but fact is it's a slightly short week. I'm still surprised the Eagles couldn't get things right with Yo back in the middle, so I wonder what pieces they try to move around him to make that work.
This is a game that I have struggled with tipping. The one thing I can count on for this game, I think you're going to get some really good coach reactions because Simpson's been fun to watch, and Ross Lyons is always fun to watch. Even if his teams aren't, he is.
He's pretty deadpan, and I enjoy that. I mean, our dad and I are the type of people that like Stephen Wright's comedy, so I think that makes sense.
I want you to guess what percentage of people in the AFL tipping competition have tipped which team? Who's picked more and at what percentage?
I think 58% have tipped the Saints.
71% have tipped the Eagles.
Reload the page.
71% have tipped the Eagles. Yeah, I'll count again.
1 for Martin, 2 for Martin.
The Saturday night game. Wait a minute, Richmond shouldn't be going down the highway. They haven't done this in 7 years. I thought they didn't have to do this anymore. How dare they do this to a Big Four club?
It is a real shame that this has been done without Damian Hardwick, because I would love to hear his thoughts.
Soon enough, the Suns will come down the highway as well.
Yes, but he's in no position to complain about anything. They're the Suns. So, 7:30 p.m. locally, 5:30 a.m. on the East Coast, 2:30 a.m. our time. The Cats went undefeated in March and April. They went winless in May. This game will be played in June almost everywhere in the world.
It'll still be May in Hawaii.
Will it? Yeah, by 30 minutes.
Yeah, Hawaii is 3 hours behind us during our daylight time.
Yeah, I can never keep track at what time of year Hawaii's what.
I bet you don't want to remember the meeting last year between these clubs.
I just remember getting outplayed. It was a 4-goal loss looking at the numbers. Geelong very inaccurate, including a 2-7 first quarter. Nathan Broad.
When Richmond kicked 6 straight? Ouch.
Yeah, and then looking at the notes from this, Nathan Broad played really well against Jeremy Cameron. Ben Miller was good. I like him. And John Segler somehow not only played that game, but played another 3. Or, well, I mean, he officially played in the game. I guess saying that someone played doesn't imply the quality of their performance. So I guess technically that's correct. There will be some changes this week. First off, Mark Blitzovs and Jai Clark have both had their suspensions accepted for high bumps on Lockie Whitfield. I think Blitzovs was pretty cut and dry. Clark, I think they could have appealed, but you can use it as an excuse to get someone else in.
That someone else probably being Braden Parfit.
Well, there will be multiple openings in the midfield with Blitzovs also out.
Sean Manna.
He's more of a small forward.
He's a pretty versatile player.
I mean, if you get him in there up front, then could let Brad Close do more midfield work. But look, Mitch Hardy had 37 disposals last week. The midfield's been getting absolutely clapped lately. You got to give him a shot at some point. Gary Rowan could be back from an adductor injury, which probably means smaller forwards and no Shannon Neal, who really can't mark right now. Other than that, I've really liked him. Not enough the way he moves.
Not enough grip up.
And then it sounds like Reece Stanley could be available, but I would still go with Conway for one more. I think Nankervis is a good matchup for him, and then give Stanley Brody Grundy.
Well, are we thinking that they're just going to go with 2 rucks between Conway and Stanley?
I don't think so. Especially considering how they've subbed Ruckman out lately, that seems really unlikely.
I could totally see them, though, having both in and subbing out 1 for Hardy.
But the problem is, what if someone gets injured and then you're kind of stuck with both? I would not do that. Although I do think Stanley could offer something on other parts of the ground because he sure ain't offering it in ruck contests. I think he actually has some other football skill. But yeah, Hardy should be in. If Mitch Hardy's not in, I will not promise to do anything ridiculous because I've seen how those things age.
But we riot.
I will not be walking some ridiculous distance. But that's kind of like I've seen that haunt multiple people in baseball media.
Yeah, Jim Rooker.
He's not the only one.
The Tigers will be less interesting in this game. Yes, Jack Graham could come back in, but Shea Bolton is in concussion protocols. That instantly zaps some of the electricity out of this game.
You know, in terms of players, like on a scale of how talented they are and how watchable they are, he's not an amazing player, but he's like, if there was a Brownlow for just like watchability, he'd win it every year. It's like, you know, there are some very good players that are not very exciting. I'm trying to think of a good example of that. There's a very good player that just doesn't really excite me.
Honestly, a lot of Josh Dacos, as crazy as that sounds.
Trying to think of someone who's like,
Just like some total engine room guys, like Rory Laird.
I mean, he's been down this year. Kind of like, I say Clayton Oliver. I haven't been that excited watching him. I just like watching the giant vein on his forehead. Like, you know how Geelong's like the blonde guys with headband team?
You've already went over this.
Yeah.
Melbourne is the main team because of him and
Max gone.
Right. Well, there is a somewhat like for like there, as much as you could do like for like with Shea Bolton, because Ryan Mansell will be out of protocols and can provide some good forward pressure. Elsewhere, how do you manage things in terms of rucks? And really, it comes down to, where do you want Noah Balta? If you want him forward, then maybe there could be some switching done. Maybe Samson Ryan slides out and Jacob Kaczynski comes in. Kaczynski could also be swung back and forth as well. So if you're wanting some versatility and just some potential magnet moving in-game, I'd say Kaczynski in for Ryan.
As someone who wants the Tigers to lose, please move Noah Balta forward. Please bring Jacob Kaczynski in.
I don't think there's anything like bad about Kaczynski, but
he has not played well. But if you watched Noah Balta this past week and the stability that his intercept marking ability provided for Richmond's defense, you'd be absolutely insane to put him elsewhere. So please do that.
Please suffer from temporary insanity, Adam Muze.
Yes, that would be great.
Remember, whatever you do when you're temporarily insane, you get away with.
I mean, in France, you can just get high and then you can commit any crime you want.
On an unrelated note, the Cats are 45.5-point favorites, and I think this could easily be closer.
Yeah, I would probably bring this down about 7 to 10 points. I mean, my hope, and I think it's realistic, is that Richmond probably have a bit of an emotional letdown from that game.
Dreamtime, easily their second best game of the year.
Going from that to, even though it'll be sold out, it's still just a change in energy. But I do think they had some substantial changes that made them better last week, the biggest one being the return of Noah Balta.
How nervous are you on a scale of 0, not nervous at all, that the Cats are going to win this, to 10, constantly chattering my teeth and biting my fingernails?
Put this at about a 2.5 at most. I mean, I feel like I would be more confident if the Tigers had absolutely gotten drilled this past week, but they're still not in a good state, just injury-wise. It's time to fatten up on them for percentage, and I wish we were in a position like the Swans where percentage doesn't even matter. Also, theirs is 150, but let's get that done. Win this game. All right. One of the many things that I enjoyed when we got our first exposure to footy in 2020 was games at regional venues. Obviously, the circumstances that created them that year were less than optimal. But that season had games in Cairns.
Oh, I forgot to mention earlier, they're making a push for Hawthorn to take Cairns as their secondary home starting, I think, like 2026.
Seriously?
Well, their Tasmania contract's going to be running out, and it's not like they're going to have a bunch of home games there after 27 anyway.
Oh, wow, there are actual articles about this. Yes.
I'm hoping that Hawthorn extends through 2027 in Tasmania to keep things up there, Hawthorn and North both. And then maybe we look toward Cairns or like some regional sites. Like, I'd love to see a game in the Riverina. I think that's an area ripe for an AFL game. So put something in Albury-Wodonga, like I forget where exactly it is they play the Ovens and Murray Grand Final, but that holds about 12,000. It might be Lavington. They had put a BBL match there. Put a game in Lavington.
I want to say 2020 also had a game go up to Townsville.
No, I don't think so.
It was 2019. But yeah, 2020 had Cairns. It had Darwin.
Dreamtime in Darwin, which the women will revive.
And of course, it had our personal favorite, Alice Springs. This will be our fourth time experiencing the Alice Springs game, as there wasn't one in 2021, I believe.
Did COVID get in the way of that?
I think so. I don't know if one was ever scheduled. I don't recall.
But it'll be the Demons hosting again.
They host one game there a year.
And hopefully we'll get their Arenta version of their song again. It'll be again.
Yeah, they were going to play the Lions there in 2021, and they ended up playing it at GWS.
I don't remember that at all.
You probably just remember Dreamtime Perth from that round.
Yeah, that would do it. But
And also the Eagles beating Carleton in Sydney. Okay.
That's a distant memory.
But this game, and it's Melbourne hosting Freo, who's given them trouble in the past, especially at the G. So we'll see if the change in scenery works to Melbourne's advantage. They had won their last couple of trips there before losing last year in those really ugly conditions to the Giants. I feel like that's almost more relevant than discussing last year's Melbourne game against Freo, although Freo won that one by 7 in round 11. Melbourne won the X score by 17, but missed a bunch of easy shots.
That was one where I remember Josh Tracy having a really prominent game.
This is such a good matchup for it, because this is a game that isn't going to ever really fill up the G.
It's not a game that's going to fill up Optus in all likelihood either.
I think Optus, they can still draw 40.
But I always love just taking a game out to Traeger Park, and the weather should be much better this time. Yes, rain is coming midweek, but game day itself should be low to mid 60s Fahrenheit.
And like I've said before, I wish American sports did some of this. I think it would be easiest for baseball to do, especially with some of the upgrades that have been made to a lot of the minor league parks. You know, if you're the national pastime, try to play games in more places. Like at some point, take a game to every state. Like a few years ago in conjunction with the College World Series, they made a big deal out of the first ever major league game in Nebraska. Let's do a new state every year until we've gotten all 50.
They done North Carolina at Fort Bragg.
That was for the troops.
You know what I'm going to say here? I want Midnight Sun MLB.
Oh, yeah. I can get down with that.
Much of Alaska is above the Arctic Circle. There's a tradition there of a minor independent league baseball game.
I think it's like one of those college summer leagues.
Might be that. Yeah, but it's the Midnight Sun game. It starts at 11 p.m. and is played without lights on the day of the summer solstice. This Traeger Park game will be 12:30 p.m. local time, because they're on Central Time. So 1 p.m. Eastern Australian time and 11 a.m. for the Western crowd. For Americans, 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific. This will be one of the games that helps lead into my birthday. And I'm just pumped for Alice Springs in general, and the fact that I'm going to be focusing on this game. I just think back more to the Alice Springs game from 2 years ago, that good showing between Melbourne and Port where Causey Pickett just went off. He might have kicked 6.
I remember he had a couple of pretty impressive angles on the run.
Yeah, I'm hoping for more of that big time. But yeah, weather should be nice, thankfully. The Demons have some questions in terms of the tall forwards, because Harrison Petty's status is up in the air after being subbed out with an ankle injury. Ben Brown has continued to take a lot of shots at the VFL, kicked 3-3 this past week. And then Matt Jefferson, pick 15 in 2022, kicked 5 goals. Not sure if they consider debuting him. I'd say still probably a bit more likely than Disco Turner coming back, because that seems like a real rehab assignment there for him.
So Ben Brown kicked 3 goals in the VFL and then pitched 7 no-hit innings for the Chicago Cubs. That's really cool.
Interesting that we're doing this name thing with Ben Brown and not Dylan Moore.
It would be really cool if in a Cubs-Mariners game, they already played this year, damn it.
So if Ben Brown and Dylan Moore played each other the same week that Melbourne played Hawthorn.
No, just if Ben Brown faced off against Dylan Moore at all.
I don't really see any other changes needed for Melbourne, because the outside game looked a lot more solid with Lockie Hunter back in, pairing him up with Ed Langdon and sometimes Caleb Windsor. It opened up the game for all of them. So sorry, Jack Billings. Sorry, Bill Laurie. Not really sure if your services are going to be needed for a while if things stay healthy.
Ben Brown did not appear in any of the 3 Cubs games in Seattle this year. Fuck. Michael Frederick should be out of concussion protocols, which is awesome.
He and Sam Switkowski are the biggest source of forward speed. And with the different look for Melbourne in defense being dominant in the air, I want to see how they can handle more of a ground-based attack. I don't think the Toms would stand up as well to that. McDonald and Linson. What a game for Adam Tomlinson this past week, by the way. Welcome back. It's the typical list in the waffle for the Dockers. Are Neil Erasmus and Will Brody just in the doghouse at this point?
I think so. Well, I think the thing with Erasmus, you just want to get him consistent time, and there hasn't been a chance to do that,
Especially on the inside when Rayshawn and Sarong have been healthy.
Yeah, it's like, he's gotten some appearances in the sub role, and you want to give a guy consistent time, and he hasn't been able to have that.
And also, he's been pushed more out on the oval when he's gotten those chances anyway. The Demons are 11.5-point favorites. I do want to give them the edge in Alice Springs, but I'm not sure if their improvised defensive structure could stand up as well if Frio really used their speed. That would be Frederick Switkowski, Bailey Banfield also, and pressure from Tom Emmett.
You know my Frio thing that I'm going to keep saying, I want Carl Warner to get more games.
He is yet to appear again after round one. This is a head-to-head where the road team has tended to find success, so maybe that's another reason to tip Frio, and maybe to tip Melbourne 7 weeks from now. Yeah, a lot of rematches here.
One last game for the round, and it's a matchup that this is a good Sunday slate. This has 2 games better than any games you get on a lot of 3-game Sundays, and this one I'm super intrigued by. The location does have a lot to do with it, as Gold Coast hosts Essendon at People First Stadium.
You're still not used to that, huh?
No, but the Suns are used to winning there. They're undefeated in stadium under that name.
Is it the name? Is it Dimma?
Is it the trumpet?
The live trumpet?
Oh, you know what? I'm guessing. Will they wear their Indigenous jumper this week because they haven't had, a home game in Gold Coast? So I think that's something to look for. Also, obviously, Melbourne with Alice Springs could do that.
Did they not do it round 9? I don't remember.
So I don't think I'm not sure if it had even been dropped yet, but 11 p.m. our time, 2 a.m. Sunday on the East Coast. It'll still be Saturday here when it kicks off. And 4 p.m. locally, once again, Fox Soccer Plus, because, got to show replays of NASCAR qualifying instead.
And drag racing.
No RuPaul involved, sadly.
Jujubee, with that gaping thing you call it. I think I could go spelunking in there.
Spelunking?
So one reason to like the Suns, what they've done at home this year. One reason to not like the Suns, Essendon lead the all-time head-to-head, 11-2 with 1 draw. And they are 7-0-1 in their last 8 meetings. It's been 8+ years since the Suns beat them.
Now, Essendon have 2 losses. One was to Port, the other was to Sydney. Yeah. It's really funny, though, that percentage-wise, they are not only beneath the Suns, they are beneath all of the other top 13 teams.
13!
And the moment they lose a game, no matter who it's to, no matter how, people are going to start calling them frauds. And I just feel
pathetic front runners.
Maybe. I don't mind Essendon, as I've said, but it will be funny to watch people participate in that.
That meltdown, whenever it happens, will be a pretty good one. Last year, these teams met once in round 2 at Marvel Stadium. They'll also be meeting under the roof this year around 22. The meeting last year was tied at 3/4 time. And then Essendon won the 4th quarter 36-8, and it could have been a lot worse because that 36 was 5-6.
Now, the 2022 meeting was the Sam Draper Goal of the Year meeting, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Jezza from the boundary was still way better.
I remember that was one of the games I watched for Oregon along with Alice Springs. So I do.
Maybe that was the same day.
Yeah. Kyle Langford kicked 5 goals too in that 2023 meeting. Remember when he was a defender?
Not really.
Just because he wasn't memorable?
Yeah.
For the Suns, Sam Flanders is, quote, an automatic inclusion. So clearly he's over whatever bug he had this past week.
I wish they could do it like Vanderbilt head baseball coach Tim Corbin did a couple of months ago when he was asked why one of his players wasn't in.
Well, something about him puking up a storm?
No, he just said he has the shits.
Have we forgotten about Malcolm Roses Jr.? I don't think we have, but I think a lot of other people have. And he could play as early as this week. Sad that he couldn't get in for the Darwin games and bring a 4th Territorian in there. But he is one of the players who makes Gold Coast extremely watchable. So in order for me to be able to stay awake on a busy weekend, yeah, I'll take Roses in anytime. Don't know where else he could really where else could he slide things around. I imagine Jed Walter will stay at AFL level despite only getting 1 touch this past week. But Sam Day, an inaugural Sun, kicked 4 goals in the 2s and had played well in the actual AFL before that. Maybe Day comes in for Jed Walter I don't think you'd be resting Walter again this.
No, but he played poorly enough that he was definitely what you would call a you suck sub.
I mean, one touch kind of by definition is.
Yeah, so that's a tough call. Essendon should be able to get Harrison Jones back in.
I'm actually not so sure about Harry coming in. Yes, he's available after serving that suspension for the dangerous tackle of Zach Fisher. However, Nate Caddy took his spot, and even though he didn't score a goal on his debut, kicked 2 behinds, I think he took like 10 marks though, and showed some promise there. So
he was authoritative. Like, he was a noticeable presence, and even without kicking straight, he was a positive presence. I think that's the best assessment of his performance.
I like the adjective used there, authoritative.
Nick Cox was subbed out with a hamstring injury, and apparently he's going to be available, which if you had looked at it at the time, you would have said, oh, that's probably like 3 weeks.
Cox is not as important to the defensive structure as he was, obviously, thanks to one Ben Mackay. Now, with our expectation that Barry will have to choose a side for King's birthday eve,
I'm Barry!
Maybe Cox's health is more important than some may realize. Or maybe just there are 2 Barrys because of some bifurcation in the timeline.
Let me just remind you, something will probably happen to one of Harry or Ben this week. I don't know what, but something, because the odds of one of them, if not both, getting hurt seem just too likely.
They've never played against each other in the AFL.
There are reasons for that. Do the math.
Do your own research. This is one of the rare times where we'll encourage people to do their own research.
Like, actually do your own research. Don't just, look at one meme or whatever.
On the smaller side, there's always Dylan Shield to bring in. And if Nick Cox can't go, then Zach Reed could finally get a chance, I guess.
This just seems like another game that could go either way. Suns favored by 7.5, which seems higher than I'd put it. But also, I do think the Suns are the more likely team to win via blowout.
So this is kind of like going by the average.
No, I think the average I would actually probably put out a little farther in the Suns' direction is the weird thing, but I still think the most likely outcome is an Essendon win.
But a narrow one?
Yeah, there's a lot. A lot to take in.
Ethan, entertain me. Who is your main character pick for round 12?
Ooh, I have given this absolutely zero thought. You know how we've had snakes on the Oval?
Yeah, that's a New South Wales thing.
There are no games in New South Wales this round. We're going to have a Bilby on the Oval.
Okay, where?
I don't know, but we've got 7 games for it. And again, I like the chances of there being an after the siren winner this round, or at least a chance to win after the siren. And I think the most likely time for that is going to be Sunday.
My pick,
and of course, would happen because, I'm not going to be seeing games live Sunday.
Oh, right, because you're going to a wedding.
That is right.
My pick is the train that they put at Traeger Park. I feel like somebody could hit it. I feel like they could decide to use the horn there instead of a siren. There's going to be something involving the train. I think it's the train. It might be the Gone.
I like trains.
But I remember last year, I believe there was a train that they put behind the stands behind one of the goals. And I feel like that's going to be a focus again.
Not as good as the Islanders' car.
Okay, Australians who know that is a hockey deep cut that's not around anymore. That was a Barclays Center relic.
The only thing that was better than that during the Islanders' Barclays Center residence was the goal horn. It didn't even make it out of the preseason. It was so bad.
They ended up bringing the horn over from Nassau Coliseum, I think, and then ended up going back to Nassau anyway. Now they've got their own place. Traeger Park in good conditions. Maybe this could be an audition for it to host some more games. I know that there's talk about maybe the Northern Territory would get a 20th team, which to me makes more sense than Papua New Guinea getting the 18th NRL team, and that looks like that's happening.
That would be kind of neat. Maybe, wouldn't it make more sense for Papua New Guinea to get a Super Rugby team?
I mean, I guess they might already be represented somewhat by Moana Pacific. Not really, though.
Also, I think Moana Pacifica has one white guy.
I think that's kind of the point. Question mark?
No, it's just really funny that they have one. Or it might be more than one.
All right. That'll be it for this preview. I think this will be surprisingly long for 7 games, but we'll see.
Again, look at the amount of legit games this round.
It'll be cracking. Dang it, I was trying to crack my knuckles.
I fucking hate that, so I'm glad you failed.
I've had better ones in the past. I remember having an episode titled be Cracks Knuckles, Proceeds to Crack Knuckles in 2022. He's at Castle Media. I'm at Benjamin HK01. Grind Harambe is at Cat Named Grind on Instagram. We are all at Americans Footy. And bye, Ethan.
Bye.
I will miss the cat more than you.
I don't blame you. I would too if I was leaving.